So Richard Riakporhe is the new British heavyweight champion in a fight that probably went a very different to how I expected it to go. Because going into this fight, of course, you've got Jeamie TKV, who's the current British heavyweight champion, and Richard Riakporhe, who, yes, to be honest, has looked very good since he's moved up to heavyweight, and did look good for the most part at Cruiserweight, and did even get to a World Championship fight against Chris Smith, which he lost. But even that alone has shown the level that he's capable of getting to. But of course, like, he did lose to Chris Smith and then moved up to heavyweight. And like I said, he's had good performances since he's been at heavyweight. And then of course, Jeamie TKV being the biggest step up in competition at heavyweight in particular. And he goes out there and shows exactly why he's at the level, in my opinion, because Jeamie TKV is a good British level heavyweight. You know, he proved to be a bit of a banana skin for David Adelaide, and also went on to handedly beat Fraser Clark. I don't want to say he dominated Fraser Clark, but definitely at the back end of that fight, you know, it was dark for Fraser Clark. And you got to think, if Fraser Clark was in that position against a better fighter, they probably would have got him out of there. But Jeamie TKV, like I said, he's no world beater. I don't think anyone was going into this fight saying, well, Jeamie TKV could make it a world level. But a good British level heavyweight, and a guy who's been in there with some tough guys and come out the other end of it, right? And, you know, current British heavyweight champion. So you're always going to give a bit to the champion because that's the nature of the game, right? Because the other guy's got to beat the champion. It's how boxing should be, right? But Richard Riakporhe goes in there and he's way bigger, far more athletic, in amazing shape. But again, I'm watching this fight, I'm thinking, well, at the end of the day, muscles don't win fights, right? And Jeamie TKV did have some moments, but ultimately, Richard Riakporhe's clearly just far too much of a total package for Jeamie TKV, where if a guy was facing Jeamie TKV and he was just fast, TKV could adjust for that. If he's facing a guy who's just strong, he could adjust for that. If he's facing a guy, if he's facing a guy who's, you know, not got much power, you can adjust for that. A guy who's only relying on one big power shot, he can kind of adjust for that. He couldn't really against David Adelaide eventually, but that fight ended weirdly, and I'm not even going to get into that now because I'll go on a whole rant about how Jeamie TKV and David Adelaide fight was messed up and the stoppage was mad, but that's a separate video, and I've probably already made that video in the past and that's been uploaded, so check that out. I'm sure it exists if you go on the channel and search up Jeamie TKV or David Adelaide. I do remember making that video actually, so that's somewhere in the archives. But yeah, like I said, Jeamie TKV he's a good level fighter, and you're gonna have to get up pretty early in the morning if you're gonna beat him at this point in his career. I think this is pretty much probably as good as Jeamie TKV's going to get. And Richard Riakporhe went in there, steamrolled him, if we're being honest. Like I said, TKV did have some moments and did force Riakporhe to sort of show his defensive fundamentals, and they weren't amazing. They weren't super amazing. They weren't super slick in my opinion at all. But they were good enough to get through Jeamie TKV. And the stoppage, in my opinion, was really sus. It was a bad stoppage here because the referee just felt undecisive as well. The referee felt really undecisive and felt like he thought he was going to stop it, and then he's there like, well, I've waved it off. I can't sort of go back and see Jeamie TKV take more damage. I've got to kind of step in now, even though it wasn't the right time. That was not the right time to stop that fight. Jeamie TKV was wobbled, yes, took a couple big shots, but showed that he was still in there defending himself. You know, he literally had just pushed Richard Riakporhe off of him. And Richard Riakporhe's not a small dude, so if you're pushing him off of you, like, you've still got somewhere wherewithal. You've still got some idea of your whereabouts at least, right? Granted, Richard Riakporhe could have, you know, got pushed off by Jeamie TKV, come in and then thrown some crazy shots that could have, you know, really damaged Jeamie TKV, because, you know, especially at heavyweight, guys don't, you know, guys can bang, right, to say the least. But it just looked bad. It was an awful stoppage in terms of the way it looked. It looked amateurish, honestly, from the referee. But like you say, you know, Jeamie TKV was on the wrong end of taking a bad few shots. Richard Riakporhe looked like he could have carried on going, but, you know, that's boxing. Just because you look like you could carry on going doesn't mean you necessarily actually could. But all Richard Riakporhe can do now is just, you know, thank God for the win and keep it pushing. There's nothing Riakporhe can do about this now. You know, he's got to stop on Jeamie TKV, and that's going to be in his resume forever now. And Riakporhe's a new British heavyweight champion, and it's clear he wants to go down that easy route by calling out Johnny Fisher, because there are far better guys out there than Johnny Fisher. But you go out the easy route. It makes sense. He's a ticket seller. You do the copper box again. You know, easy payday. Riakporhe's a far better boxer than Johnny Fisher. Quite an easy night. I get the approach for sure, especially at the age of Richard Riakporhe. Shout out to the Jab Father as well, because we were exchanging on X about this. How the hell is Richard Riakporhe 36? I thought this dude was a young prospect. I thought this guy was a young prospect who cut his teeth at feather at cruiserweight and is now moving up to heavyweight to sort of get some big money fights. This dude 36. This dude's got a few more years left, bro. And he's worrying about Johnny Fisher. In my opinion, he should be trying to get as close to that world title fight as possible, because that's where the real money is. Granted, I know the way you look at it, you're like real money. Like Johnny Fisher would still be bringing decent money. You know, I'd imagine comfy 6-figure paydays. A comfy 6-figure payday, I'd imagine at this point. But yeah, he could have gone up the world heavyweight route. You know, maybe could have called out a Matt. Well, he couldn't have called out Mahmoudov, who's on the same card as him. But that sort of level of fight would be a good fight for Richard Riakporhe, and I actually do think Riakporhe would win that, because Mahmoudov is very limited in what he is as a boxer. Not to say that Riakporhe's got so many levels to him and so many weapons in his offensive bag, but he's got more than Mahmoudov. Mahmoudov's very limited offensively and was able to get by on, you know, power and size for the most part. But huge win for Richard Riakporhe, and he's the new British heavyweight champion. Let me know what you guys thought of the fight, what you thought of the stoppage, and what you think is next for Richard Riakporhe as the British heavyweight champion. Another episode of the Seth Solo Cyclist in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.